In this section, we'll talk about independence. Two events are independent if they don't affect each other. So if A and B are independent events, then the fact that A has occurred will not affect the probability of B occurring. So again, they just don't affect each other at all if they're independent. But if A and B are dependent, then if A occurs, that will affect the probability of B occurring. So let's try a few examples. We have a bag with 5 red marbles and 7 blue marbles. If we draw a red marble out of the bag and then we put it back, does that affect the probability of drawing a second red marble? Well, if you put it back, you should be back to the same starting place, so it shouldn't affect it. But let's look at our next scenario. If we draw a red marble out of the bag and we don't put it back. So again, don't put it back. Does that affect the probability of drawing a second red marble? Well, yes, because we will have less red marbles to choose from. If you already took one red marble out, you'll have less to choose from, so you're going to have affected what's happening. So next, are successive dice rolls independent? So if I roll the dice once and then I roll it again, does what I get the first time affect what I get the second time? The answer to this should be yes, they shouldn't affect each other. Oh, I forgot to do that up here. So let's see, in number 1, when we said it should not affect it, if it doesn't affect it, then we would say independent. But in number 2, because it was affecting it, then this would be dependent. So again, on dice rolls, one dice roll shouldn't affect the next dice roll, so this would be independent. Let's see, our next one, in a standard 52 card deck are the events drawing a red card on the first draw and drawing a red card on the second draw independent if you put the first card back before drawing the second card. So if we put the first card back, then they shouldn't affect each other, so they should be independent. But in the next example, it's exactly the same, but we don't put the card back, so it's going to affect each other. There are less red to choose from, so they would be dependent. Okay, so again, this, if you don't put your cards back, this is what we call without replacement. That would be dependent. If you put the first card back, then it is called with replacement. Here are some past student suggestions of independent events. So we have gender and test scores, gender of a first kid and gender of a second kid, weather in Utah and price of diamonds in China. These are all things that shouldn't really be affecting each other. Now some suggestions of dependent events. Gender and height. Boys are usually taller, so being a boy affects your height, so that would be dependent. Height and shoe size. Taller people usually have bigger feet. Hair and eye color. Darker hair is more likely to have brown eyes, etc. So again, independent means they don't affect each other. Dependent means they do affect each other.